Every year, Apple releases updates to its major operating systems, and they seem to be removing support as much as they gain features. Right now, the oldest and weakest Mac that will run Ventura is this guy, the 2017 12-inch Retina MacBook. Now, I've had this for about a year. I paid $140 for it, and I was thinking, hey, wouldn't it be fun to make a video on the minimum spec MacBook? But then I thought, why just stop at the Mac? Let's do the full minimum requirements Apple ecosystem: iPhone, iPad, and Mac. So get subscribed, leave a like down below, and let's get into the cheapest Apple ecosystem setup I've ever done. Today's video is sponsored by LightMe and their new flagship lighting bundle, Fantasy Plus. Fantasy Plus Media Lighting Kit transforms your living room into a high-end, mood-lit movie theater with just a few simple steps. The kit includes a TV backlight with HDMI sync box, underglow lighting strip, and color bars. And with that, there are numerous combinations for making your living room look insanely professional. You can install the light strip under a couch, or as I have, inside the TV stand for a cool ambient glow. The color bars add ambiance even when your TV is off, and with the HDMI sync box, your HDMI signal is reflected as a glowing halo, extending the borders of your screen. Setup is super easy through the LightMe Home app, and you can control settings for all your devices with just a tap. Check out LightMe with the link in the description below, and you can save 10% with my exclusive code. So go ahead and check that out, and now let's get back to the video. So the Apple ecosystem is something that we've talked about a number of times on this channel, and it can be quite daunting and expensive, but the goal for today is the bare minimum, the oldest or worst or cheapest devices that actually run the newest software. And we're gonna start over here with the iPhone. At least I assume this is the iPhone because the box is smaller. Now, when you buy an iPhone, you are kind of expecting that it's going to be supported for a long time. And that would have been the case if you bought this iPhone back in 2017, this being an iPhone 8. Now, this one honestly doesn't look that bad. We've got some definite scratching around the camera lens, and I'm very annoyed that they put this stupid ass paper sticker. Hopefully I can get this off in one go. Okay, thankfully I did not have to sit here and peel for a while. So condition does not look bad. The edges of the aluminum look pretty good. The only real damage or wear that I'm seeing are a couple of scratches on the display, and the camera ring looks a little bit... yeah. Let's take a look at the iPad. So there we have it. This is a 5th gen iPad, and well, you know, okay, it's on. That's great. It's on and it's unlocked. Look at those bezels. I wouldn't worry about it too much. Basically, this entire ecosystem is 2017 entry-level products. Now, you could get a cheaper MacBook Air in 2017. However, for some reason, Apple doesn't support that anymore. They support the MacBook, which is slower. Don't ask me why. Now, I'm assuming that these devices are, yeah, the iPad's on 15.7. The iPhone, well, it's just turning on now, but I'm assuming that it's not on iOS 16. Yeah, that's not. Okay, we're gonna have to do some updating here, charge all of these things up, get to know them a little bit, and then I think you're going to be very interested by this ecosystem. Okay, I'm actually super excited to talk about this Apple ecosystem because this is the most interesting one that I have ever done. Now, my initial goal with this video was to just go out and buy the minimum required specification to run the latest version of macOS, iPadOS, and iOS. And a side effect is that this has now become the cheapest Apple ecosystem I've ever taken a look at. So how much did everything actually cost? Well, we'll start with the MacBook here. I've actually had this for a couple of months, and I paid $140 for it. It was listed as having a bad battery, and I replaced that. Now, the interesting quirk of this MacBook is that the battery is actually fused to the bottom case. In almost every other MacBook, it's fused to the top case. So, as a result of that, the batteries for this thing are pretty cheap. I paid $10 for mine, so I'm all in on this thing at $150. That is pretty cheap, if you ask me. Now, the iPhone, this is a base model iPhone 8. It's just 64 gigabytes, nothing special, and I paid $115 for this. $115 for a fully working iPhone with a decent battery that runs the latest iOS. What? And now we get to the iPad. How much did I spend on this iPad 5th generation? Also a base model, which means 32 gigabytes of storage. Well, I paid $90 for this, which brings the price of this entire Apple ecosystem to $355. This entire ecosystem, a Mac, an iPhone, an iPad, all costs less than what you would still consider to be a cheap MacBook. And so the question is, with expectations as low as this, with an ecosystem this cheap, but all on the latest software, is it any good? And I honestly would argue that it is. Now, when you buy devices like this, just because they can run the latest software doesn't mean they get all the latest features. For example, this iPad is on an A9 chip. It's a little old, and basically it's the same recipe as now. It's an iPad Air, pretty much spec for spec, but just with a newer iPad stuffed inside of it. And the result of that is it doesn't have a ton of the features that newer iPads have. For one, there's no smart connector, so you can't use this with any of Apple's or the third-party smart connector keyboards, which are frankly quite convenient. You're gonna have to buy a third-party Bluetooth one, which you're gonna have to charge with a micro USB port. It's a whole thing. The other thing that is slightly disappointing is this iPad is 1 year off from being able to support Sidecar, which would mean that we could use it to extend the MacBook. It doesn't run that. You need a 6th gen iPad, which costs a little bit more than this. And then there's the elephant in the room, the fact that this is essentially an iPhone 6S. It is slow, and it really doesn't look or feel modern. I mean, just look at switching pages on the home screen. It's really slow. Open up the app switcher and swipe through stuff, and you'll notice that pretty much everything that you touch is gonna have to reload the application. But that being said, it does most of the stuff that you would want an iPad to do. You can run applications in split screen decently well. Everything works. It's just not very flashy or fast. So honestly, for $90, I'm not complaining too much. I don't know that this is an iPad that... Now, if we move over to the iPhone, honestly, I think the iPhone 8 is a great deal. Apple still sells a phone that looks exactly like this. It's called the iPhone SE, and it costs $430. Now, you could definitely make the argument that because that's a much more modern, updated phone, it even has 5G, it's worth essentially 4 times the price. But I would say absolutely not. Why pay 4 times as much for the exact same experience? Is it because you want the new phone to be faster? When has an iPhone ever felt slow to you? This thing is more powerful than the MacBook. It has no problem running iOS 16. Trust me. The only issue that you might run into with a 5-year-old iPhone 8 like this one is the battery, let's be honest. A quick check of the battery capacity shows that we're at 93%. That's not bad for a 5-year-old phone, and I was not particularly careful about finding this. So yeah, there's gonna be some luck of the draw, but I wouldn't be afraid to use this phone. The key difference between this 5-year-old iPhone and this 5-year-old iPad is that this thing actually feels really smooth and fluid, and that's because it's on an A11 Bionic. This iPhone was when the Bionic chip was introduced, and that's Apple's term for having performance and efficiency cores that can all work together. Before that, the A10 was called the Fusion chip. It had 2 performance and 2 efficiency, but it couldn't use them both at the same time. It had to switch, hence Fusion. And the A9 which is in this guy. I mean, that's just a straight up dual core chip. So that's like the Intel to the Apple Silicon here. Now, finally, we get to the MacBook, because this is an interesting one. These MacBooks are controversial because, quite frankly, they're kind of terrible. But I kind of love this MacBook. I think that this is a fantastic form factor. Now, while the 2017 version of the 12-inch MacBook is the slowest Mac that can run Ventura, it's also the fastest 12-inch MacBook, and it fixed some of the previous concerns, mainly the fact that the original one had completely horrible track record for reliability. They broke all the time. They're basically unusable out of the box, and this honestly is a lot better. If you set your expectations low, as you probably will if you're talking about $350 for an entire Apple ecosystem, genuinely not a bad option. It's got a great trackpad with Force Touch. It has a bright, beautiful display, even if it's a small one. And honestly, I don't know that the hate is all it's cracked up to be. For $150, this is just as usable as any other laptop that you will find for that price. When it was new and it cost $1,300 and it had this processor, yeah, that's a bad deal. But these things are cheap as crap now. You can get these things for the price of a potato. And look at it. It looks amazing. So the ecosystem overall, quite frankly, I was expecting it to be terrible. You know, you're talking about the base model iPad, the base model iPhone, and the controversial, very slow MacBook. That sounds like a recipe for disaster. But for the money, $350 for all of this, honestly, it's hard to complain. If I had to make any changes to improve this ecosystem, the only one that I think is a really compelling deal would be to get a 6th gen iPad instead of a 5th gen. It's only like an extra $20 and you get sidecar support and a newer chip. So I would definitely do that over a 5th gen. But when it comes to the iPhone, for $110, I don't think you're gonna find anything that's dramatically better than this. The newer stuff like an iPhone XS even, those are like $200. That's twice the price. And this MacBook, I mean, if you step up from this, that puts you with a 2018 MacBook Air, which I already made a video on why that thing sucks. You could also get a 2017 2 Thunderbolt port MacBook Pro, also a pretty dismal laptop, and realistically probably a couple $100 more than this. So I don't know. For this price point, I think we're doing pretty good overall. I'd spend $20 on an iPad 6th gen and pretty much call it a day. It's weird that I'm making a video recommending the 12-inch MacBook, but these things have gotten so cheap now that they're kind of interesting. I kind of like it. Let me know your thoughts on this ecosystem in the comments below. I'm super curious to hear what you guys think of all of this. And of course, as usual, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video.